Is the world on the verge of nuclear war? That's what we're going to find out today. Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. And today we're going to talk about a number of headlines, both directly and indirectly related to Bible prophecy. So let's dive right in. This first one is from Yahoo News. It says Putin is hinting at using nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Is he bluffing? Could Russian President Vladimir Putin be preparing to use nuclear weapons? That's the latest rumor from the war in Ukraine, where the Russian army is on the run. Putin's nuclear warnings, coupled with unusual sightings of nuclear weapons equipment in Russia, could be signs he's preparing to use them. But U.S. intelligence would likely detect the buildup before a nuclear attack, allowing time to warn Ukraine and prepare if their use spirals out of control. And then it goes on to state that they think the likelihood of that happening is very low. But of course, as we see often in some of these mainstream media stories, the lead gets buried. So if we scroll down several paragraphs, we'll run into this one. It says, in the meantime, observers have noticed some indications of nuclear-related activity inside Russia. On October 3rd, The Telegraph reported a train was spotted with armored vehicles belonging to the 12th Main Directorate of the Russian Ministry of Defense, which is responsible for the physical security of Russia's nuclear weapons. The vehicles are typically assigned to units protecting nuclear weapons in the field. Konrad Mazika, an analyst in Europe who publishes the Ukraine Conflict Monitor newsletter, believes there was a purpose behind releasing the video, telling CBS News, "This video of a train is a very good example of Russian strategy of trying to increase the pressure on the West and signal its maybe not necessarily readiness, but willingness to escalate the situation." Now, we have to take these things with a grain of salt because we're in the fog of war. There's campaigns of deception, propaganda, all sorts of different signals that are being sent out by all sides to try to muddy the waters. They don't want to give clarity in regard to what their next move is. So, again, are these is the movement of this train an indication that Russia is preparing to use nuclear weapons, or was it leaked by Russia? We don't know. This goes on. It says Jeffrey Lewis, a professor at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, is not convinced the train sighting is directly related to the deployment of nuclear weapons, but says that sightings of specialized trains used by the Russian military to transport nukes could make him think otherwise. So again, movement. Keep in mind, Russia knows that they are being watched. Every nation in the world knows that they are being watched. They understand the capabilities of other nations. So would you really, if you were planning to do this, would you move things on a train out in the wide open where satellites can track the movement of the train? I don't think you would, but maybe I'm wrong. But I wouldn't think that that would happen. So rather than looking at what is happening on the ground, which again can be plagued with deception because this is a time of war, I would try to think as my enemy, as my adversary would think. If we scroll down a little bit more, we'll get somebody who's doing that. This says former U.S. Secretary of Defense William Perry, an expert on nuclear weapons and nuclear policy, thinks Putin could use nuclear weapons. Perry, who has met Putin several times, told The Atlantic, Putin is rational at the moment, not deranged, and would use nuclear weapons in Ukraine to achieve victory and thereby ensure the survival of his regime. Perry believes that the use of a low-yield nuclear weapon against a military target would have little downside for Russia, and that the inevitable international uproar might blow over in a week or two. So try to step for a moment inside Vladimir Putin's brain. Try to think about how he is likely to react in this situation. We have a proxy war between Russia, NATO and the United States, the Western Alliance, aligned against Russia. Russia conventionally doesn't have the forces to win that war in all likelihood. Again, we don't necessarily know particularly what's going on or what the objectives are. But if Putin feels that this is unwinnable under current circumstances, he may make a rational decision, according to Perry, to use a low-yield nuclear weapon similar to those used in Japan in 1945 to hit battlefield targets, knowing that there would be a huge international uproar, but realizing it probably wouldn't escalate to the point where it would lead to a back and forth and then a nuclear exchange, all-out nuclear war, and that after a week or two, it'll probably blow over and the news media will be on to something new. That could be what he's thinking, and that's what William Perry, who actually knows him, says he believes that is how he is thinking. So we can't underestimate the possibility that nuclear weapons could be used in this conflict. And we know that Putin has recently mentioned, well, what's your problem? The United States used nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Why can Russia not use them? Why is this a red line that can't be crossed? That's what he stated publicly. So we had to think that maybe that's deception on his part, or maybe it's plain spokenness and that's how he really feels. We don't know. And so when we see this back and forth between Russia and those aligned against Russia and Ukraine, we see a potential for this conflict to spiral out of control because a lot of people seem to think that they can control it. This is how wars throughout history have worked. People think, oh, we're going to win very easily, we're going to win very quickly, we'll be able to control the situation. And then once the first shots are fired, it quickly spirals out of control. And again, this has been war-gamed numerous times, this specific situation, and it leads to all-out nuclear war between Russia and the United States. So we need to take this very seriously. We've had, just in the last couple of weeks, the Nord Stream pipelines being blown up. We've had a bridge linking Crimea to Russia had an explosion on it. Then Russia retaliated to that explosion by launching missiles at numerous cities throughout Ukraine. So we have this back and forth of escalation. We need to be very careful and hope. We need to pray that cooler heads prevail and that nuclear weapons are not used, and especially that there is not an escalation in the use of nuclear weapons, which would be bad for the entire world, not just Ukraine. Now, along those lines, let's talk about Defcon Levels. Now, Defcon stands for Defense Readiness Condition. It's an alert system used by the U.S. military to prepare itself internally for any threats of nuclear war. So we go to this website and they have a chart here that gives us an idea of what these Defcon levels stand for. So the lowest level is Defcon 5. That means, hey, everything's normal, or at least the conditions for nuclear war are low. Defcon 1 means war is imminent and maybe even unavoidable, or the thought at that time is that it's unavoidable. And then we have these levels in between. Where are we right now? Well, that information is not released publicly by the United States military. However, there are open source intelligence tools that can be used for people to make estimates on what level we are at right now. And according to those estimates, we are at Defcon 3. Now, what does that mean? Let's put some perspective on that. What's the history of these Defcon levels? So this talks about what is the highest level ever reached, and that is Defcon 1. It happened one time that we know of. This says the Thule Air Force Base in Greenland initialized Defcon 1 imminent war once in October 5th, 1960, according to Pulitzer Prize winner Annie Jacobson's The Pentagon's Brain, an uncensored history of DARPA, America's top secret military research agency. According to Jacobson, a full moon caused the Greenland ballistic missile early warning system to mistakenly pick up several hundred incoming missiles from Russia with a 99.9% certainty of attack. So we've got this one instance where we got to DEFCON 1. Luckily, they realized that this wasn't an attack from Russia, and it didn't start a nuclear exchange. Now we have a couple of examples of DEFCON 2. We have, obviously, the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962. That brought us to DEFCON 2. And then for a very brief time, January 15th, 1991, in the opening moments of Operation Desert Storm, we moved to that alert level. I'm not sure if they thought other nations would be drawn in or if Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction he was going to use. But for whatever reason, we moved to DEFCON 2 that time. So we've been at DEFCON 1 once, DEFCON 2 twice. We've been at DEFCON 3 only 3 times prior to right now. So we have the Yom Kippur War in 1973, Operation Paul Bunyan in 1976, which was an alert in response to attack by North Korean forces. And then we have September 11th. So we have 3 times in our history of the United States that we know of anyway, that are public, that we've been at DEFCON level 3. Only 6 times have we been at DEFCON 3 or higher. And yet, right now, estimates are the United States has been at DEFCON 3 since February 28th of this year. These previous instances were very brief. They weren't months in duration. Yet this one, the belief is, and again, this is not public information, so these are estimates. But if the estimates are true, even on the low side of some of the estimates I've seen, it's since August. So we're looking at a high level of alert for readiness for nuclear war at a level that really is unprecedented when you stop and think about it for this duration. Certainly we've been at higher levels, but have we been at this high of a level for this long of a time before? And that should make people pause and think, and we need to pray, again, that cooler heads prevail and leaders make the correct decisions so that this does not escalate out of control. But again, we live in the season of the Lord's return, so we would expect rumors of war like this to come about, and it's a sign of the times in which we live. So in other news, we have this from CNBC. It says, Bank of England strengthens emergency stimulus to help ease market turmoil. It says, the Bank of England on Monday announced further measures to ensure financial stability in the UK, building on its intervention in the long-dated bond market. The bank's Financial Stability Committee on September 28th announced a 2-week emergency purchase program for long-dated UK government bonds known as gilts to restore order to the markets and protect liability-driven investment funds from imminent collapse. The central bank announced on Monday that it would introduce further measures to ensure an orderly end to its purchase scheme on October 14th, including increasing the size of its daily auctions to allow headroom for gilt purchases ahead of Friday's deadline. So we went over this in the past. The September 28th, when they announced this program, it's believed that had they not done that, that 90% of the pensions in the United Kingdom would have collapsed. They would have been insolvent that day, that afternoon. So this has the potential for a very serious financial crisis with contagion effects for banks and nations and financial institutions, businesses all over the world. This is from yesterday. Today, we get this headline on Zero Hedge. Bank of England expands bond buying program amid historic rout to end fire sale and halt market dysfunction. So this is another intervention. So we had one the 28th. We had one yesterday morning. Now we have another one today. We read on, it says 2 interventions in 24 hours is pretty extraordinary, said Sandra Holdsworth, UK head of rates at Aegon Asset Management, adding that the Bank of England's steps showed how the problem in the pension industry was much bigger than anyone thought a week ago. The beginning of this week has seen a further significant repricing of UK government debt, particularly index-linked gilts. Dysfunction in this market and the prospect of self-reinforcing fire sale dynamics pose a material risk to UK financial stability. This is one of the largest economies in the world, guys, and we're talking about the government's financial stability. That doesn't portend well for the global financial system. We read on, it says the root cause of the problem is that investor confidence in the UK has been shaken, and the Bank of England is attempting to mask the symptoms of that, given it can do nothing to address the cause. Focus on that, guys. So they are attempting to mask the symptoms, which is what we've been saying before, given they can do nothing to address the root cause. What is the root cause? Well, the root cause is a lack of energy. And central bankers, governments, they can't print or legislate into existence energy. And the UK is short energy. They are probably potentially in the worst energy position of any country in the world right now. And what does that mean? Well, that is driving companies into bankruptcy. This is from The Guardian. It says company insolvencies hit 13-year high in England and Wales. The number of company insolvencies in England and Wales hit a 13-year high in the 3 months to the end of June, as soaring energy costs forced a record number of firms out of business, according to official figures. There were 5,629 insolvencies in the second quarter, the highest since the third quarter of 2009, when the UK was in the grip of the global financial crisis. The rate that companies are going bust is 46% higher than the average quarterly figures recorded for England and Wales over the 4 years before the pandemic. More than 1 in 10 UK businesses reported a moderate to severe risk of insolvency in a survey conducted in August, and a sign that a combination of higher cost and weakening economic outlook are weighing on companies. So guys, this is having a major impact on households, businesses. They're then unable to pay their bills, which leads to ripple effects, a contagion within the local economy, as companies aren't able to collect what they're owed. They declare bankruptcy, they can't pay the banks. This creates a crisis in and of itself, and it's not confined to the UK. It's a European problem. As we see here from the Asia Times, it says global margin call hits European debt markets. Risk gauges in Germany's government debt market rose last week to levels higher than recorded in the 2008 financial crash. That's what we just finished reading about the UK, was levels last seen during the 2008-2009 financial crisis. As margin calls forced the liquidation of derivatives positions held by banks, insurers, and pension funds. Big institutional investors that spent the past 10 years insuring their portfolios against falling interest rates now face massive losses as hedges blow up. A key measure of market risk, the spread between German government bonds and interest rate swap agreements, jumped above the previous record set in 2008. The cost of hedging German government debt with interest rate options or option-implied volatility, meanwhile, rose to the highest level on record. We are seeing, as we go into winter in Europe, we're seeing the energy crisis turn into a financial crisis. And this financial crisis threatens to bring down major banks, major banking institutions, and frankly, governments. Some of these the question now is, can these governments pay their bonds? And, they can always print to pay back the bondholders, but will the pounds, will the euros, will the yens, will the dollars that they are providing have the same purchasing power they did before? Again, if they're printing more and printing more, that can't be the case. The value of those would go down, which causes what? Inflation. And we're already in a borderline hyperinflation scenario. So it's only going to make the problem worse. So this is a potential crisis in Europe. We've been talking about this for some time. Does this set the stage for the rise of the Antichrist kingdom? We'll have to wait and see what happens. But it's certainly throughout history, when you've had terrible financial conditions, particularly in the inflation and hyperinflationary realm, they give rise to tyrants and dictators because people are looking for answers. They just want to eat, and they're willing to trade their freedom for food, for shelter, for warmth. And these are the types of conditions that Europe is facing right now, where they're looking at freezing and starving type conditions. I mean, these are almost war-like conditions, even though the European continent is not directly part of this war in Ukraine. The impact is almost the same as if their cities were reduced to rubble, where people are seeking shelter from the cold and they're seeking food, and the economy is falling apart. So we'll keep an eye on this. And then last, I want to end on this story. This is from the Huffington Post. This is from 2011, but it's cropped up on social media in recent days. It says, could a small nuclear war reverse global warming? And it says, nuclear war is a bad thing, right? Yes, it's a bad thing. And then they go on to look at, well, what if nuclear war reversed global warming? Then it wouldn't be a bad thing, right? That's the way these people think. And to me, it shows that this right here, it's a religion. It is a religion and people are willing, as part of that religion, to sacrifice others to appease the God they serve. As evidenced by this, when you're talking about, global warming might be reversed if we have a nuclear war, and they say the cons seem to outweigh the pros in the event of global cooling caused by even a small nuclear war. Well, thank you for that, guys. But it shows you the depravity of the mind that there are people that even think this way, who would think, well, if several 100,000 or several million people died in a limited nuclear war, would that be good for global warming? Would that be good for the planet? Well, a bunch of people would have to die for that to happen. That's a terrible way for people to be thinking, but guys, this is what we're dealing with, is this mindset that is just, I believe it's outright insanity. So guys, I know that, again, a lot of bad news out there. Nuclear war. Maybe the nuclear war is good. Maybe we're being driven to nuclear war by people who think that it'll be good for global warming, or it'll reverse global warming. I know this sounds like bad news. I laugh at it because I know the good news. The good news is Jesus is coming back. We live in the season of the Lord's return. He told us, when we see all these things happening, when we see these events coming together, when we see them converge, we know that his return is right at the door. He is near. He's coming soon. So look up, because your salvation draws near. So that's why we can have hope in these times. We can have joy in these times. So don't hang your head. Be happy as we move forward, knowing Jesus is coming back, and make the best use of whatever time we have left to share the real good news, which is that while we were sinners, Jesus died on the cross in order to grant us forgiveness of our sins so that we could have eternal life. So go out, preach that message, do everything you can to stand for liberty and freedom and justice and all that's good and right. And all of this stuff, God's got a plan. He'll take care of it, so there's no need to worry about any of it. So go forward, guys. Leave your comments below. What do you think? Let me know what you think. Make sure to like and share this. God willing, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.